Hello, I am Jody Wolf. You're watching EXPOZ, February 20th, 2011, 10:57 p.m., Birmingham, Alabama. And topic, one of my two scares in Mexico. I'll go back to 1996, just after my wife and I semi-retired. We threw a dart at a map. Where it hit, we said, let's go. And it ended up hitting the border of Texas and Mexico. So in July of 96 that year, we had a great trip, hit 3 border towns, and drove all over out west and absolutely loved every moment of it. And the next year, 1997, we started out again. This time we went I-40, went straight north of Birmingham through the first Bass Pro Shops. Can't think of the where it was, doggone it, Missouri, I think, and then headed I-40, got to went through anyway, started up to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the snow hit us and it started pushing us south. And Tucumcari is where we turned off of I-40 in Tucumcari. It's a Clint Eastwood movie where he jumped off the train car with a horse, but anyway, we went south, and because horrible weather in the mountains and New Mexico and all that was pushing to the southeast as well, so it chased us, and we went all the way through back to Lower Texas, back to Alpine, Texas. Stayed that night or 2 nights later when we got there, and that's at 5,000 feet, and it was cold and it snowed. Started out that morning and went all the way as low as we could go in Big Bend Park. Big Bend Park, we turned right in a town called Presidio, and that was Presidio, Texas. That was on the Rio Grande in the Big Bend Park. So we drove that road, and it had been snowing, believe it or not, and it was kind of nasty, sticky, muddy, but we drove anyway until that road ended about 15 miles tops. And we crossed 2 rocky springs, what looked like narrow creeks or something, and we crossed 2 of them. And the ground looked sound. I got out and walked on it. It looked okay, so we went on across and drove only about a half a mile, and the road got so bad we put the car in forward drive, or SUV, and we turned around and got out of there, and it was getting bad. And we played in the creek a while to get the mud off. But anyway, so we left and went back out of there. And, you know, we had our 10 days, so we got tired of it. And because the weather was not good, and we went back home. The next year, she wasn't feeling well, didn't want to, anyway, I flew her to San Diego to her sister's, and I said, I'm going to drive out and I'll pick you up. I'll see you in about 10 days. So I went to Mexico, and I went into the border town across from Eagle Pass, drove through Mexico, came out in Del Rio, and drove on down and finally came out on Van Horn, got on I-10, went west, and a mere 20 miles down in the town was Sierra Blanca, and that's Texas, just a little, wasn't even a one-horse town, wasn't even a store there, but I got off, and I was looking at a map, I saw Highway 1111, and looked like it went straight to the Mexican border, along west along the Rio Grande, and then back out to I-10, a simple 50-mile ride. Wrong. I got lost, very lost, and I finally got out there, and I was frustrated, and I already had, keep in mind, almost 100 miles on my car. Actually, a little bit more, about 115. And I said, well, I better go back. And about that time, DEA and Border Patrol jumped up on me. And me being an ex-cop, I showed them ID, and they saw my tag, and we sat and talked 45 minutes, and they told me something that blew my mind, and they gave me a warning about this. I told them about my trip the year. Oh, by the way, they'd been watching me for over an hour, and they were amused. They knew I was lost, and but they watched me, and they were in two separate vehicles on two mountain ridges overlooking this valley I was in, running up and down, back and forth, looking for one particular road, which was where 111 turned to the right. And anyway, he told me, and we were talking about that. He said, when you go out here, take your left at the do not enter sign. I said, I saw that. He said, well, that's the road. Take it anyway. Don't worry about it. You need four-wheel drive. It's a real bad country and mountainous, but you'll come down to a beautiful place called Indian Hot Springs, and there's also a little bitty town there, and the name of it was Valle, or Valle Juarez. And anyway, I didn't see the town, but I saw the Indian Hot Springs. I went in, visited, took pictures. Great, great place. I was the only man there other than two Mexican guards that let me in. And but they told me, and I told them I was out there in April, this just a few months before. And he said, where'd you go? And I told him. He said, you went to Presidio? I said, yeah. He said, and you turned which way? I said, well, turn west. He said, how far? I said, well, I went and crossed a couple of little springs. He said, well, you crossed the Rio Grande. I said, that's like a slick, a big rocky. He said, that's right. You crossed the Rio Grande into Mexico. He said, and you were in a sheriff's backyard, a Mexican sheriff of a tiny town, not too awfully far from El Paso. He said they knew you were there, and had you continued on, they were probably trying to get to you as you were going in, and it was so bad for you, you turned around and went out, and that's probably what saved your life. I said, you got to be kidding. He said, just this past May, which was just the next month after we were there, they pinned murder charges on the sheriff, had a shootout with him. He died, but he had kidnapped an agent, DEA agent out of El Paso, and been a big lookout. Don't know where he was killed, but he was buried in this Mexican sheriff's backyard, and I was in his backyard. I didn't know that, and I just kind of, turned white a little bit. But anyway, that was a scare. And anyway, I got on and picked up my wife in San Diego, and I told her about that, and it really broke her up pretty bad. And she said, I got some more bad news for you. I said, what's that? And her sister, she said, Jody, I understand that every time you go in, you carry your gun. I said, I do. She said, don't ever do that. If they catch you, no question is asked. 5 years, you're gone. And I didn't know it. And my wife, like I say, she said, please, please, if you ever go back, don't carry your gun. Hide it under a rock, do something, but do not carry it in. So I have not carried it in since. And but that was my first scare, and I got another one coming up, and I have to get to it with another part, or part two. But again, they would have killed me. I'd have been toast if they'd gotten to me. It was as difficult for them to drive in that mess as it was for me and my wife. But the sad thing is, we didn't know that we were in hostile territory. We didn't know about drugs at that time. But it was going on. Just you didn't hear about it really until 2006. Jody Wolf, EXPOZ.